Well, AP Human Geography. Here we are again on the video machine, taking care of some notes for Unit 5. All right, so we're just had finished up together in class, part 1 of 3. All right, we've got this unit split up into 3 parts, and we had taken care of pretty much kind of like our quick run through the history of agricultural processes, finishing up with the good old Green Revolution. All right, although we will come back and revisit some of those concepts before we wrap up on Unit 5. We are going to jump into Part 2 of Unit 5 here, okay? And so this is going to be this idea that, we're going to focus in on agricultural regions and just kind of take a look at the way that, as you look at different places around the world, what you can grow there, and then even when you get into beyond just growing plants, but even getting into animals and that sort of thing, how that's all going to change, right? When we talk about our bigger concept of agriculture as we approach it through the lens of Unit 5. So let's start you off. No, I am keeping my Roman numerals kind of just continuing off. We had section 4 when we were talking about the Green Revolution, so don't be thrown that I'm just keeping the Roman numerals going, even though we're starting on kind of this part 2. Someday maybe I'll go back and fix that, but you know what? It's not going to be today. All right. So, quick little reminder here. This is probably, I don't know. Just be happy that sometimes some of the knowledge that you need to remind yourself of, because I think this is stuff that we do get some gimmies every once in a while in AP Human Geography before we get into the real dense stuff. And so whether we're talking about domesticated crops or domesticated animals, do remind ourselves that they do need a very, very specific climate to be able to live in. All right. And we've talked before about kind of that mid latitudes that kind of run kind of north and south of the equator, and how those are some areas that typically where we see more population, and probably not too surprising that also usually gives the best climate when it comes to growing certain types of crops and raising certain kinds of animals, that sort of thing. So climate, you need that. All right. You also need specific types of soils, especially on the crop part. All right. But even for the animals, because those soils are going to grow the, whether it's the grasses, the hay, alfalfa, the things that the animals are going to eat, grain, things like that. And so, also having the specific types of soil that are going to be able to support crops is important, because as we look at some parts of the world, where you've got deserts and desert-like conditions, those aren't going to be soils where you're going to be able to do much of anything. You can plant seeds and, you're going to grow old waiting for something to sprout, right? And then, whoops, hit the wrong button there. There we go. And then we got precipitation levels, okay? Yeah, do you have stuff falling out of the sky? Do you have enough of it to be able to keep things alive, whether it's crops, whether it's animals? And so those, as I jump down here to B, those are kind of the 3 drivers, all right, that, like it says there, determine what you're going to be able to do in terms of planting crops or raising livestock, that sort of thing. And it doesn't matter where in the world you go, right? Whether you are in a modernized, highly developed country or in a still kind of growing, undeveloped country. These are things that are, beyond the control of, and to a certain extent, of what us humans can do when it comes to, controlling the climate, all those sorts of things. All right. So when we are back in class, you're going to save yourself a little bit of space under C. Okay, maybe drop 4 or 5 lines beneath there on your page. And I'm going to give you a little foldable, all right? And I know everyone has their own way of doing it. I know some of you want to glue the whole thing out there, and some of you fold it into a little accordion. It's so cute. And then some of you just kind of, just fold it in half. I'll let you guys figure out how you want to do that. But I'm going to give you a little foldable that's going to break down, nice little chart kind of form, some of the different agricultural regions that we have around the world. and then this idea of these bioclimatic zones, although the folder I'm going to give you mainly is agricultural regions. Okay, but then we're going to kind of break this down, and there'll be a little bit of some of this is kind of jumping off on some of these regions that we'll be covering. And so start you off and just kind of talk to you about each of these so that you've got a little bit of a basic knowledge. But this is all this gets into some of the terminology that we got to be pretty expert on when it comes to Unit 5. So pastoral nomadism. That's how you're going to word that word pastoral. All right. And whenever you hear any reference to pastoral, I guess I'd have to go back and hear how Mr. Sin says it. He probably says it wrong because, Mr. Sin. But it is a reference to people or places that revolve around a herding lifestyle. Okay, herding. Look at it, just like you see it. D. That's not H-U-R-T. That's what you guys are living because you take APHUG. You're living the herding lifestyle. No, this is herding. And so, yeah, these are people that, back in history and right up to, in some places, even still present day, whose lives revolve around, whether it's goats or sheep or, any of those kind of critters that live more in a herd kind of existence. And these are people who raise them. This is part of their livelihood. This is how they make a living, is raising them and selling them off. Whether it's going to be sometimes, like sheep, every year shearing them for their wool, and then eventually selling them off for meat, for slaughter. All right, and so when we talk about this concept of subsistence agriculture, these are people who, this is how they live. All right, this is what puts food on their table, keeps a roof over the head, and that sort of thing. Now, with pastoral nomadism, when we use that word nomadism, okay, the idea of a nomad is someone who roams around, someone who doesn't necessarily stay in one place. So this has got to go way back in time to the hunters and gatherers. The lifestyle that some of those people were living before the agricultural revolution ever took place. The first one I'm talking about here. And so these people are a little bit of a throwback to that. And what we see with them is, depending on what time of the year it is, they're going to have their herds down in kind of the flatlands where there's going to be plenty for their animals to eat, to graze on, and then when the weather changes, they're going to head to different places. They're going to go where the most food source is, where the climate is going to be the most hospitable to them and their animals. That sort of thing, okay? Where I say that's unlike ranching. Ranching is usually you're going to keep all your animals in one place. Kind of like a lot of what we watched on the Food Nation video with those CAFOs and, those big industrial farms, ranches. Those animals they live in a very, very confined area their entire lives while they're being fattened up for slaughter. This is different. Okay, these are animals that, like the picture there, they're kind of going from place to place and living their little animal lives. Right? Shifting cultivation. This is something that we mentioned already before when I was kind of doing a quick run through our different history of agriculture. And so this kind of gives you a little bit more of a breakdown definition of it. I think this is also on our vocab sheet, and there's different ways you can look at this. One way you can look at shifting cultivation is that you clear a field, whether you're using slash and burn, kind of going back to that whole idea of swidden farming, and you use that land that you've cleared. And you keep planting on it until you notice that your plants aren't growing quite as quickly, quite as big. And that's probably because the soil is starting to give out. And then you just pick up the operation and you move it to another area where you can clear a field and start the process over again. Okay, that would be, you're shifting from one field to another. There's another way of looking at it that gets into more of this idea of sometimes what you'll also hear referred to as crop rotation. And we may come back. I'm trying to remember if we come back and talk about this. We may, but if not, here it is. And kind of like this picture down here shows. I know it looks like some kind of a game board there or something, but this is kind of the idea Whereas where you plant something different, if this were the fields that you owned, okay, if the circle, and you're planting different crops in each quarter of that circle, and then every year you rotate them, okay, and your real smart farmers actually will get to a place where one of those quarters they won't plant anything; they'll just let it rest for a year and just kind of let the weeds grow and that sort of thing. Give the soil a rest, and they'll keep rotating those every year, and that way they are able to maintain those fields for longer than a traditional shifting cultivation where you just keep using the fields over and over and over again till the soil gives out. This will give you more time because you're always allowing one quarter of your fields to recover and to kind of rebuild, regenerate in terms of the minerals and vitamins and all that kind of thing that you find in the soil. Okay, so kind of two different ways you can look at shifting cultivation. All right, mixed crop and livestock farming. This is where you're going to see a style of farming where hold on here. Sorry, had dogs that needed to go step outside for a moment, take care of some of that dog business. Anyhow, mixed crop livestock farming, pretty much kind of self-explanatory what I got there for number 3. Okay, so and you might have kind of a in a one farm kind of a situation where you are growing the kind of crops, right? It might be corn, it might be wheat, it might be grain, but you're going to use the crops that you're raising to feed the livestock that you also have on that farm. Okay, growing up, my aunt and uncle had a farm up north in Washington State that I'd go hang out with my cousins a lot during the summer months when I was a kid, and they kind of had a mixed crop situation going on. They had Hereford cattle and had probably about 75 to 100 head of them, and but they also had on part of their farm they were growing corn and I forget what kind of grain it was, but anyhow, they used it. I mean, yeah, they'd save a little bit for themselves, have some corn on the cob dinner, but most of it was being raised for the cattle, and so they kind of take that approach and use corn with they had chickens as well, that sort of thing. So yep, feeding the livestock and get them ready for that day when you send them to the slaughterhouse, and make some money from them. All right, so that's what we talk about with that form of mixed crop and livestock farming. All right, grain farming is a huge, big cash crop. Again, where you're raising crops mainly to make money from them, not just to feed yourself. Not that what we call subsistence farming. And so the big ones you've got mentioned there, wheat, and nowadays most big commercial farms that grow wheat, they have now formulated both the traditional spring wheat that comes to grows through the summer and then is harvested in the early fall. But now they also have formed up that type of winter wheat as well. And so again, that idea of double cropping, where you can grow both seasons and increase the volume of your yield. And the more yield, the more money. Because again, most of these farms, it's about making dollars. It's a business. Kind of like the farms we're seeing there on the Food Nation video. All right. Other examples of that grain farming would be corn, soybeans, another big one. All right. If you've got those 3 down, then you're in pretty good shape. If you need to explain anything at all about grain farming and give an example of what grain farming includes. All right. Number 4. And then we were just talking about it, and kaboom, there's the word commercial. Okay. And so when we talk about commercial farming, commercial agriculture, that is where we get right in there with this whole idea that the crops you're raising, it isn't just because you need to feed, ma and pa and, their 15 kids on the farm. It's big business, and you are selling to probably grocery store chains. You are selling to companies that, are there all about making money on this. And so I've got in there crop-based for profit, but livestock farming as well, as we saw on the video, also as part of this commercial agriculture. Really, both of them can fall in there. All right. You'll hear some references to it, and so I've got the also known as commercial farming being called market gardening, because usually what this gardening is being done for is to eventually to get the product of the farming to market. Okay. And I know sometimes some of us have been to the little farmers markets that they have, in town, especially during the spring and the summer. And, you can go there and you can buy direct from the farm. But market also could describe something like, Safeway or Walmart or Fred Meyer, anywhere that sells groceries. That also falls under the category of market gardening. All right. And again, like I said, another way of describing commercial farming. Yet another way of describing it, truck farming, because the way that a lot of the product of these farms gets to market is through the use of refrigerated trucks. Usually these big giant semis, and the trailers, the containers that they're carrying are special refrigerated trailers, so that the produce or the meat, whatever it may be that they're carrying, is going to stay fresh on the journey from, whether it's directly from the farm or maybe from a processing plant, from there on to, again, the end place, the retail, whether that's going to be a grocery store, a farmer's market, whatever it may be, a roadside market, that kind of thing. Okay, so a little of that connecting in with commercial farming. I think we'll be diving in a little bit deeper on some other aspects of commercial farming later on in the unit. So yeah. All right, dairy farming, which, well, you see it right there, includes everything from milk, cheese, eggs, all that stuff. The farming that foreign farming that has been getting a lot of attention here lately, because especially the eggs category there, because we have avian flu, that is bird flu, that is really impacting chicken farms really across the globe. But yeah, here in the United States, they've had to in many of those chicken farms, they've had to cull, is the word, cull, cull the flocks of chickens, and that's um, a well a euphemism for kill. They've had to destroy them, because if they have if they're carrying the disease, this avian flu, then they transfer it to the eggs, and then the fear is they transfer it to us humans. And no, we don't. We've had our fill of pandemic. We've had one of those in a lifetime is enough, and so we don't want to see another one of those popping up. Anyhow, all that fallen into the realm of dairy farming. Okay. Let's see, local based in developing countries, yes. If you're talking about, some parts of Asia, some parts of Africa, some parts of the Americas, South, Central, and South, you'll see that usually dairy farming is very, very local. These are all products, milk, cheese, eggs, all of it, that have a high risk of spoilage. And so if they do not have access to, again, the technologies like refrigerated train cars or semi trucks, those containers, then they can only sell in a local basis. If they try to transport much longer than that, they're probably going to get to a sales location, and they're going to find that that their crop or whatever they are hauling along, transporting, is spoiled. So that is, we see very much a local base in developing countries. In developed countries, we have this concept of the milk shed. And this is pretty much saying that, we can kind of take a look at an area where maybe you have some farming going on, and then we can kind of like almost draw a circle from beyond that area and say that is the range where you can deliver those dairy goods to markets and stores. And again, you're going to be able to go much, much further than you would be in those developing countries, because you can take advantage of technologies like refrigerated, semi-containers and refrigerated train cars, that sort of thing. And so they call that, the area where, all these dairy products come from, and all the area that they can service, they call that the milk shed. Okay. And when we're back in class together, I'll give you an example of this little diagram over here. You can take a look at anything that is dairy based, whether it's a package of cheese, a half gallon of milk, a container of yogurt. And by looking at this little code system here, you can find where your milk comes from. And you will find very quickly that it doesn't necessarily come from your own state. It might come from across the country, depending on what kind of a dairy item it is. Milk, usually something like that has the highest spoilage rate. It's going to probably be something close. But as you go to cheese and yogurts and things like that, the milk shed they come from could be clear across the country. Anyhow, we'll take a look at that together in class. We'll see where my yogurt comes from. I always got a little collection of yogurt in my fridge back there. All right. Okay, moving it along. Mediterranean agriculture, another example here of all of our different forms of agriculture. Again, our different different regions and different varieties. Okay, and Mediterranean agriculture is just like it sounds. It comes from the Mediterranean region, but now it's come to describe areas beyond just the Mediterranean. It has everything to do with, matter of fact, I think I have right down here below. There we go. Anywhere that is Mediterranean usually has a dry climate. It means you have to do a lot of your own irrigation. And let's go with this one right here. There we go. And transhumance. This kind of goes back to that pastoral nomadism we were talking about. Transhumance will be practiced oftentimes in Mediterranean agricultural zones. And what this means is during the winter, you're going to bring your livestock down to low elevations, down on the flat where they're going to be able to still find, some grasses that they can live on and, that sort of thing. Now, if you stay on the flat and things start getting into June, July, August, it's going to get so hot, it's going to run the risk of probably killing off some of your livestock. And also, you're going to find that you've probably overgrazed the land down there. There's no grass left for them to eat. And so you start heading into the foothills, okay? Don't go up into the mountains, but you go into the foothills, maybe around a mountain range. And you get into a climate zone that is cooler because you're heading up into elevation. And because it's been largely untouched since probably, the prior fall or winter, there's going to be plenty of grazing grasses, for the animals to be able, the livestock to be able to feed from. Right? And so that's another aspect of Mediterranean agriculture. So along with countries around the Mediterranean, okay, like Italy and southern France, places like that, over here in the United States, California is considered to be an example of Mediterranean agriculture. Again, a lot of that dry climate in parts of California, as we know from always watching all those fires and everything that comes from the almost, continual drought-like conditions in a lot of parts there. And then the concept that we learned about there in our food video, that they have to be really creative when it comes to irrigation because they don't get enough rainfall to take care of their needs. So there you go, Mediterranean. Livestock ranching, just the way it sounds, okay? And again, the concept that your animals are fenced in. Some ranches are massive in size, okay? Hundreds, sometimes thousands of acres, okay? We're talking about square miles of land, and those are ones where the animals have a little bit more grazing ground and can kind of be a little bit more, they can be a little more animals doing that. A little bit more free range, and then some ranching is very, very confined, and controls those livestock from pretty much the minute they're born to the minute that they are sent off to slaughter. I think we watched that one segment there of Food Nation where they talked about where they doubled the size of these animals in the space of about 6 months to a year to get them prepared for slaughter. And so, but all that is part of that ranching concept and what we call livestock ranching. Okay, and again, it's all profit driven. Once those animals reach that size, they're sent to processing plants. They end up at like Tyson food factories. Some of them turned into ground meat. Some of it it's gonna be steaks and, shanks and stuff like that will be sent off to grocery stores. Some of it processed sent off to fast food restaurants, all that kind of thing. All right. But all starts off with commercial livestock ranching. All right. I'm looking at the time. We're going to go here about another 5 minutes or so and start getting ourselves into section 6. And so starting to focus here on, you see it there, where economics and agriculture collide, all right? And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, the land that farmers are using is it's expensive. Real estate, especially in developed countries, is incredibly expensive. And then the people who are going to work for you and work on there, they are going to, they're going to expect for you to be able to pay people a decent working wage. So you got those labor costs, and then capital, which is the investments you have to make into the feed, maybe buying the animals when they're young, the machines you're going to need to use, whether you're again working with crops or working with livestock, it costs a lot of money to make money. And when we talk about capital, that's kind of what we're getting into, where you have to invest in order to make a profit in the end. You just hope that what you make is more than what you invest, right? Is what all that kind of gets into there. All right, so again, getting into some more of our specific vocabulary, the idea of extensive land use, and that is when you are in a place where there is lots of land, it's cheap. We're going to find this usually in less developed countries. In a developed country, it might be in a part of the country where maybe because of climate and sometimes even just history itself, maybe there's not as much population, and so there is more land available. You look here in the United States, there are some parts, places like Nebraska, Wyoming, where the land might, relatively speaking, might be a little less expensive than trying to buy farmland out in California. Okay, so where you can find that land, and there's lots of it, and it's cheap, that's where we use that term extensive land use. Okay. And just kind of adding a little bit more to that there. Like I said, because the land is cheap, means you don't have to invest as much money to obtain that land, all right? But because you've got that land and because it was cheap, means probably that the land is pretty raw. There's not a lot that's been done to it, and it means you're going to have to put a lot of hard work into it. And so that is that concept of labor intensive. To develop that land into, highly productive farmland that is going to be able to make money for you year in and year out. You're going to have to dump a lot of money. And even then, once you have it up and working, it still is going to be labor intensive because, well, you have a lot of land. The more extensive your land holdings are that you're using for agriculture, the more labor intensive it's going to be. All right. But that is part of the picture. All right, and then we can also look at this through the lens, again, of what we've already talked about as far as pastoral nomadism, the use of shifting cultivation, all of that. Because these are different forms of both ranching and herding. We might see those come to play as well, all right? So, yeah, all of that, part of just the idea of lots of cheap land, and that extensive land use. All right. Now, when we talk about intensive land use, that's the flip side of it. You just flip things the other way around. Okay, instead of the land being cheap and plentiful, now it's expensive land, and probably in demand. More people want it than there's land available. And then your operating costs also more expensive. Could be because of where your location is. People are going to expect more per hour for the work that they do. The machinery may cost more depending on your location. All that is going to drive up your costs. And that's where we get to this concept of intensive land use. Intensive land use. All right. And I think what I'm going to do is just, let's drag this down to, I'm watching the clock. So also, this means labor intensive, okay, just like we have there with the extensive land use. We do have that aspect. Market gardening, plantation farming. Market gardening we've already talked about. This is any kind of gardening where you're ultimately looking for retail sale of whatever it is that you are raising. Plantation farming, that is getting into a form of farming that is extensive farming, usually going to be large farms that are going to focus on oftentimes just a few different types of crops. You might have everything from like pineapple farms out in Hawaii, cotton farming down in some parts of the South, tobacco farming, sugar cane farming, that kind of thing. Okay, so usually it's going to be limited in terms of the type of crops, but they're also crops get high yield. You can make some good money from them. And then the idea of double cropping again, which we've talked about, to basically maximize the money that you can make, the profit that you can make. Intercropping is another way you can make more money. And the picture I have over on the right side gives you an example of that. And that is where you are planting different kinds of crops and trying to maximize land use. And so, you might have rows of lettuce growing, but in between those rows, you plant some carrots, okay, or maybe some potatoes or something like that. And so, when you are kind of intertwining all these different kinds of crops, that's where you get this concept of intercropping. All right, and I think actually that is where we'll hit the brakes. Yeah, wait, no, okay, Floyd's going crazy here. Don't write that stuff down. You can end at number 3. That's where we'll pick it up in class. All right, that makes us a little bit of progress, and yeah, we'll jump on that ourselves. I'll get you that little foldable, and we'll finish off the rest of part 2 in class. We actually we have just a handful of slides left to do that, and then we'll be ready to move on to rural land use patterns to get us through the last part of the unit. Okay, till I see you in class, take care. Bye.